Hello students, welcome to ITLS Academy. Myself Dr. Manu Saini. So students, today we will be discussing about the guidance and procedures of marketing authorization holders. So before discussing the marketing authorization holders, let's learn about what actually is marketing authorization. Marketing authorization is the process of reviewing and assessing the evidence to support a medicinal product such as a drug in relation to its marketing, finalized by granting of a license to be sold. This process is performed within a legal framework defining the requirements necessary for successful application to the regulatory authority, details on the assessment procedure, and also the circumstances where a marketing authorization already granted may be withdrawn, suspended, or revoked. The application dossier for marketing authorization is called a new drug application in the USA or marketing authorization application in the European Union and other countries, or simply a registration dossier. This dossier contains data providing that the drug has quality, efficacy, and safety properties suitable for the intended use, additional administrative documents, samples of finished products or related substances, and reagents necessary to perform analysis of finished product as described in that dossier. The content and format of the dossier must follow all the rules as defined by the regulator. The application is filled with the regulator, which can be either an independent regulatory body or a specialized department in the Ministry of Health. And depending upon the jurisdiction, the resulting document may be more detailed. In addition to data identifying the products and its marketing authorization holder, for example, containing the address of all the manufacturing sites, appended labeling, artwork of packaging components, or may be simplified to a one-page document called Certificate of Registration. Then comes marketing authorization holder. On September 29th, 2017, the Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, released the Pharmacovigilance Guidance document for marketing authorization holders of pharmaceutical products. The document was effective from January 2018 and was applicable to Pharmacovigilance Program India, that is run by CDSCO and State or Union Territory Drugs Control Department, and we have already discussed about the roles and responsibilities of the CDSCO in our previous lecture. And according to this document, market authorization holder refers to the manufacturer or the importer of the drug who has a valid manufacturing or import license in India. The marketing authorization holder must ensure that it has an appropriate system of pharmacovigilance in place in order to assure responsibility and liability for its products on the market and to ensure that appropriate action can be taken when necessary. And there are several modules in this pharmacovigilance guidance document, and altogether there are 6 modules in the pharmacovigilance guiding documents for marketing authorization holders. Module 1 deals with the pharmacovigilance system master file and capacity building. Module 2 deals with the collection, processing, and reporting of individual case study. Module 3 covers the preparation and submission of periodic safety update reports. In Module 4 comes the quality management system at marketing authorization holder organization. Module 5 look after the audits and inspections of the pharmacovigilance systems at Maha organization, and in Module 6 it covers the submission of risk management plan. So let's discuss in details about the module 1, that is pharmacovigilance system master file and capacity building. So this pharmacovigilance master file, it is similar to the pharmacovigilance system master file, that is PSMF, and it contains all the information related to the market authorization holders, PV system, including the PV officer in charge. PV means pharmacovigilance officer in charge, PV organization structure, sources of safety data, PV processes, and PV systems. This PVMF, it should be located at the Maha's organization in India, and Maha should authorize a qualified and a trained person who should be a medical officer or a pharmacist as the PV officer in charge. And this PVMF, it should include a list of pharmaceutical products covered by the PBMF, list of contract agreements covering delegated activities, list of tasks delegated by the PVOI, audited plan, and a list of all the completed audits and inspections. Then let's have a discussion about what actually the PV officer does, or what are the responsibilities of the PV officer. This PV officer in charge should be a medical officer or a pharmacist trained in the collection and analysis of EDR reports. PVOI should be responsible for the development of training modules and organizing training for staff of PV department, identification of PV activities and framing SOPs, revision of SOPs, establishment and maintenance of QMS of PV department. We will be discussing in details about the QMS in next lecture. PVOI should reside in India and respond to queries of regulatory authorities whenever required. The information relating to the PVOI provided in the PVMF, it should include the contact details of the investigating officer in charge, summary about the officer in charge, CV with the key information on the role of PVOI, a description of the responsibilities guaranteeing that the PVOI has sufficient authority over the PV system in order to promote, maintain, and improve compliance. And it should also include the details of duty in charge, who should work in the absence of PVOI. Then there is one important organization that is also comes under this mahas, that is a CRO. And what actually is CRO? A contract research organization, also called clinical research organization. It's a service organization that provides support to the pharmaceutical and biotechnological industries in the form of outsourced pharmaceutical research services for both the drugs and the medical devices. And these CROs, they range from large international full service organization to small niche specialty group, and can offer their client the experience of moving a new drug or device from its conception to FDA marketing approval, with the drug sponsor having to maintain a staff for these services. So this figure, this just simply depicting the CRO, the how it goes. CRO helps companies in conducting the extensive tests on experimental drugs, biologicals, medical devices that government regulators require before considering this product. So it's a contract of conducting the research by a particular organization for the mahas. And now, as you know, that now more than ever, pharma companies are required to do more with fewer internal resources and in less time. So in that case, outsourcing certain function to specialized CROs, it will help pharma researchers stretch their resources and provide biotech startups with access to otherwise capital intensive capabilities. And how to choose a particular contract organization. So for that, you need to apply the same diligence in choosing a CRO that you would apply in choosing a particular employee. This includes considering if they will make the right contribution, and if that CRO is a good fit for your organization. And there are several criterias to be considered before choosing the CRO for a particular research program. Depending, and that is the capability, how capable the particular contract research organization is, and what is the level of work quality of their work which in the past they have done. What is their customer service and customer relationship with the other customers. It also needs to be taken into consideration before finalizing the CRO. Then how much cost effective a particular CRO is, and also the experience in this in this research area that particular CRO is having. So these are the points that should be kept in mind before choosing or finalizing a contract research organization. Then there are several this work, this also a responsibility of PV officer in charge to collect the safety data, and the main source for safety data shall be the medical information inquiries, studies that have already been done on a particular drug or a medical device, like non-clinical studies, clinical trials including research in unapproved populations or indications, observational studies, real world data or registries, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, or if there are some outcome research studies or comparative effectiveness research, comparative safety research, or health economic analysis. And this safety data can also be collected from the scientific literature available, and market assess can also be done about that a particular drug or health. If there is any health care related data for a particular drug or a medical device is available, that can also be taken into consideration for obtaining the safety data of any drug or any medical device. Then comes the next module, that is collection, processing and reporting of ICSR. And what exactly is ICRR? It is individual case study reports, and the sources of its information include solicited reports, that is clinical trials, non-interventional studies, patient support programs, and patient or healthcare provider surveys, etc. Spontaneous reports like patients, doctors, nurses, or pharmacists, if they provide any information, that they can also be included in the ICSR. Then literature available or contact email or helpline reports, medical information queries, reports from internet or digital media, and reports from Cdisco, etc. They can be a very useful source of information in case of individual case study reports. And valid reports to have a four elements, that is identifiable reporter. It means whosoever have reported about the particular side effect or particular ADR or particular AE of a drug, it should be identified. It should not be anonymous, and a patient should be identifiable. Suspected drug should be there, and it should be having an adverse event. All ICSRs to be submitted to NCC PVPI IPC in E2B XML format. The MA is required to code ADRs using a dictionary, but no specific dictionary has been recommended. However, indications of the suspected and concomitant drugs must be coded using the latest version of International Classification of Diseases, which allows room for redundancy. The document lists the WHO UMC Casualty Assessment Scale as the preferred tool for casualty assessment. And this document also establishes the timelines of reporting to PVPI. You can't just keep holding the data and you don't report to PVI. So they have set certain timelines for reporting, that is 15 days for serious adverse events or ADRs, and 30 days for non-serious adverse events or ADRs. However, it is not clear on whether serious events or ADRs needs to be reported to both the regulatory authority and PVPI, or if reporting to one of them will suffice. So this information, it's still not there, it's still missing. In addition, the requirement for serious unexpected ADRs to be reported to the licensing authorities, which may be the Cdisco or any of the state drug licensing authorities, paves way for ambiguity due to opening of multiple reporting channels. And WHO UMC Casualty Assessment Scale is to be used for casualty assessment, but it is not mandatory. Casualty assessment is mandatory only for new drugs. And lack of efficacy cases and medication errors, they must also be reported with the PVPI. Then comes the next module, which covers the periodic safety update reports. So periodically we have to keep giving reporting to the PVI the safety updates, if any, about a particular drug or a particular device. So a regular updation needs to be done to the PVI. It defines the recommended format, content, and timeline of submission of periodic safety update reports in conformity with Schedule Y of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act and rules. And PSUR to be submitted to the NCC PVPI 6 monthly for the first 2 years and annually for the next 2 years. Subsequent periodic safety report submission may be necessary if CDSCO decides so, based in the benefit risk profile of a particular drug. And one PSUR to cover all the formulations, dosage forms, and indications, and only interval data to be included. And this needs to be submitted within the 30 days of the last day of the reporting period. And this ICSR reporting guidelines to remain in force for this periodic safety update reports. So there's a, in this pharmacovigilance guidance document, there is a structure for this periodic safety update reports. So in this, the first comes the title page. So in the title page, the title of the include the date of reporting, the name of the pharmaceutical product, including both the international non-priority name and brand name, period covered by the report, approved indication of pharmaceutical products, date of approval of the drug, date of marketing of the drug, address of marketing authorization holders, any statement on the confidentiality of the information including in the PSUR, it should all be included in onto the title page. Then comes the introduction. So in that, a brief introduction of product, so that PSUR stands alone, but it also placed in perspective relative to previous PSURs, and circumstances shall be given by MAHAs. The introduction should contain, the reporting interval, pharmaceutical product, mode of action, its therapeutic class, its dose, its route of administration, and formulation type. A brief description of the approved indication and population. A brief description and explanation of any information that has not been included in the PSUR. Rationale for submission of multiple PSUR for the pharmaceutical product if applicable. Then comes the current worldwide marketing authorization status. So this section of the report, it should capture the brief narrative overview including the details of the country where the pharmaceutical product is currently approved, along with the date and country of first approval, date of marketing, and if the pharmaceutical product was withdrawn in any of the country with region thereof. So then next comes the the update of actions taken for safety regions. So the MAHA sponsors of clinical trials, data monitoring committees, ethics committees, or competent authorities that had either you know taken as any significant measure against the ADRs, a significant influence on the benefit risk profile of the approved pharmaceutical product, an impact on the conduct of a specific clinical trial on the overall clinical development program, and if known, the reason for each action should also be provided in the report, and additional relevant information should be provided when appropriate. And refusal to authorize a clinical trial for ethical or safety reasons for the marketed molecules before obtaining licenses, it should also be given in the report. Partial or complete clinical trial suspension or early termination of an ongoing clinical trial because of safety findings or lack of efficacy, it should also be reported. And failure to obtain marketing approval for a tested indication, including the voluntary withdrawal of a marketing application, so these all points have to be given in the report. Then comes the changes to preference study safety information. This PCRUR section should list any significant changes made to the RSI like PIL and CCDS within the reporting interval. And MAHA should also specify the date and the country of approval of particular RSI in narrative. In case there is no significant changes in RSI, MAHA should submit recent dated approved RSI as an annexure in the report. Then there come the estimated patient exposure. So this section should provide a brief about the estimated size and nature of the population exposed to the pharmaceutical product. Brief description of the methods used to estimate the subject or the patient exposure should be provided, as well as the limitations thereof. Consistent methods for calculating the patient exposure should be used for the same product. And if a change in this method is appropriate, both methods and calculations should be provided in the PSUR, introducing the change and any important difference between the results using the two methods should be highlighted. Then in the estimated patient exposure comes 3 point, that is cumulative subject exposure in the clinical trials, cumulative and internal patient exposure from marketing experience in India, cumulative and interval patient exposure from marketing experience from rest of the world. So, what comes under this cumulative subject exposure in clinical trials? This section of PSUR should include the following information in the tabulated format, that is, the cumulative number of subjects from ongoing and completed clinical trials exposed to the investigational pharmaceutical product, placebo, and or active comparator since the date of first approval of conducting the interventional clinical trial in any country. And more detailed cumulative subject exposure in clinical trials should be presented if available. If the particular clinical trials have been or are being performed in special population like pregnant women, patients with renal, hepatic or cardiac impairment, or patients with relevant genetic uh, polymorphism, exposure data should be provided as appropriate. New drugs in healthy volunteers might be less relevant to the overall safety profile depending on the type of ADR, particularly when subjects are exposed to a single dose. Such data can be presented separately with an explanation as appropriate. For individual trials of a particular importance, demographic characteristics should be provided separately if available. Then comes the cumulative and interval patient exposure from marketing experience in India. Separate estimations should be provided for interval exposures and, when possible, cumulative exposure. The estimated number of patients exposed should be provided when possible, along with the methods used to determine the same. And if an estimate of the number of patients is not available, alternative estimated measures of exposure should be presented along with the methods used to derive them if available. And examples of alternate measures of exposure include patient days of exposure and number of prescriptions given to that particular patient. Then comes the cumulative and interval patient exposure from marketing experience from rest of the world. So in this, the estimations should be provided separately for interval exposure since the data log points of the previous PSUR, and when possible cumulative exposure from the data of approval in the rest of the world. Then in the structure of PSUR, the next point comes is the presentation of individual case histories. So this section, it provide the individual case information potentially available to the Mahas, and it provides the brief case narrative with supportive investigational report wherever possible, concomitant medications, its medical history, indications treated with suspected drugs or de-challenge, re-challenge, and casualty assessment. And for that, following information is required, like line listing of individual cases received from India, line listing of individual cases received from rest of the world, and cumulative summary tabulation of SAS from clinical trials. SAS is serious adverse events, and cumulative and interval summary tabulation from post marketing data sources. It should also be included in this. Then the next point is studies. So summaries of significant findings from clinical trials during the reporting period. So this section of the PSUR should provide a brief summary of clinically important emerging efficacy or effectiveness and safety findings obtained from the manufacturer or importer sponsored clinical trials that becomes available during the reporting interval of the report, and whenever possible and relevant data characterized by sex and age should be presented. MAHA sponsored post marketing interventional trials with the primary aim of identifying, characterizing, or quantifying a safety hazard or confirming the safety profile of the pharmaceutical product that were completed or ongoing during the reporting interval should be included in an appendix. And this study, it should include the summaries of the significant findings from clinical trials from during the reporting period, findings from non-interventional studies, information from other clinical trial sources, findings from the known clinical studies, and findings from the already available literature, if any. Then comes, if one section is also there, that other information. So data from clinical trials indicating lack of efficacy or lack of efficacy related to established therapy for pharmaceutical products intended to treat or prevent serious or life threatening illness could reflect a significant risk to the treated population, and should be summarized in this section called the other information, and it is called the lack of efficiency in controlled clinical trials. Then in this section, one more information is included, that is late breaking information. So what actually is this is, this summarizes the information on potentially important safety and efficacy or effectiveness findings that arise after the data lock point, but while the PCUR is still in the preparation. Examples include clinically significant new publications, important follow up data, clinically relevant toxicological finding, and any action that the manufacturer or the importer, a monitoring committee, or a regulatory authority has taken for the safety reason. So it can be included in the other information section of the document of this updated report. Then comes the overall safety evaluation. So this overall safety evaluation, first is thing which is done is signal and risk evaluation. And what actually is the purpose of this particular section is a succinct summary of what is known about important identify and potential risks and important missing information at the beginning of the reporting interval covered by the report, an evaluation of all the signal closed during the reporting interval, an evaluation of new information with respect to previously recognized, identified, and potential risks, a summary of the effectiveness of risk minimization activities in any country or region which may have utility in other countries or regions. So, these evaluations of subsections should not be summarized or repeat information presented in previous sections of the PSUR, but should instead provide an interpretation of the information with a view towards characterizing the profile of those risks assessed as important. And in this, different name is given to different that, like important identified risk, important potential risk, and important missing information. So students, that's all for today's lecture, and in the next lecture we will be discussing about the module 4, 5 and 6 and the different terminologies that are used in the pharmacovigilance. Thank you so much.